they take a visual style that seems in some way rooted in like a Game Boy Color lineage of some kind, and they come up with a Game Boy Advance version of it. In a way that it's like you could imagine a version of the tile set for Minish Cap on a Game Boy Color, and seeing it on the Game Boy Advance is almost like looking at an HD version, quote unquote, of like a Game Boy Color concept, which I think is really cool. I think that like it keeps. There are plenty of Game Boy Advance games that try to push what you can do with like the controls and all that kind of stuff. But in many ways, I find that the Game Boy Advance games that I like the best are like refined versions of a concept that either already existed on the Game Boy or would have worked on the Game Boy.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like this, like between this and looking at Wario Land, because in both of those series, we've kind of gone on the same journey where the first one in those is an original Game Boy game, and then you jump to some Game Boy Color games. And like the jump between Wario Land 1 to Wario Land 2 and 3 and the jump between Link's Awakening and the Oracle games, it doesn't feel huge. It feels like there's a step up, certainly, but it's like not a large step up. And then you jump from Wario Land 3 to Wario Land 4 and from Oracle games to this Minish Cap, like it just feels like such a higher step. And while I think there's certainly some amount of like, you know, the teams have learned a lot of lessons at this point, it just really goes to show, like, even though in my head it's like a steady progression technologically, it really isn't. Like the Game Boy Color is not a huge step up technologically from the original Game Boy, whereas the Game Boy Advance clearly is a much larger step. And so it's sort of reframing some of that stuff for me.